In this week's Guiding Spotlight, we were going to be taking a little time to look back and shed light at the guy in the White House's first 250 plus days in office, and even as he approaches day 300. And there's so many things that he's done at the Oval Office that gets every one of us pissed off because, you know, there's so much mess that's been going on, but we're gonna help you all to understand the legal aspects of his agenda. And joining us now to help us understand some of the legal aspects of his agenda is a law professor from the Brooklyn Law School that's located in Brooklyn, New York. Please welcome Bill Araiza to the Spotlight.
Thanks,
Hey,
happy to be
Bill.
here.
How
Thank
are
you.
you?
I'm good, thanks.
You're welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you.
I want us to begin here because he's done a lot as we get closer to day 300 here. His plan was to get the travel ban in place here, where he stated that because said this, because that provision order expired its own terms on September 24th, 2017. The court said that in the brief unsigned order, quoting an earlier decision, the appeal no longer presents a live or case or controversy. Excuse me. But what would you have to say about it? Because it's like, when you look at the travel ban, it's like you're trying to separate the families apart from people who came from different countries to America. What would you have to say about that, Bill?
Well, for a nation of immigrants, this is not a very inspiring performance. We have, of course, every nation, including ours, has a right to try to protect itself and try to prevent terrorists from coming to the country and causing havoc.
Right.
But to do so on such a generalized blunderbuss basis without any sort of factual predicate for the kind of limitations that the ban entails, really is just irrational. And in fact, that's why we've seen lower courts consistently striking down this ban. And indeed, the third ban has now been struck down by a district court in Hawaii. And so it seems like courts are just not accepting it, I think for very good reasons.
They probably went in the Senate for good reasons, because apparently Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissented, saying that she would have simply dismissed the case and allowed the appeals court decision to remain on the books here.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a procedural issue that maybe only a law nerd could really appreciate. But the second iteration of the travel ban expired on a certain day. I think it was September 24th or thereabouts.
Yes, 2017, September 24th.
And so the question then became, if the Supreme Court hasn't yet ruled on the legality of the travel ban, should it? Because the theory is, if the ban has now expired on its own terms, there's really nothing for the court to decide. Right. Because strike it down, the ban is gone. Uphold it, the ban is still gone. The court decision wouldn't have any effect. The real question, and you referenced Justice Sotomayor's dissent.
Yes.
The real question was whether, in deciding not to hear this case, in other words, in deciding that the case was moot, whether the lower court opinion should have stayed in place or whether it should have been just erased off the books, or what's called vacated. Justice Sotomayor suggested that it should stay on the books. And I think for a very good reason, which is that there's very important law that those lower court opinions established. And if the court decided to vacate the lower court decision, which in fact it did, that very important law was simply wiped off the books. And now we have to start all over again with litigating the third iteration of the travel ban.
True, because the thing is that when he was trying to put that in place, it was considered unconstitutional, basically. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And again, courts across the country have been striking it down, or were striking it down, both the trial courts and then the appellate courts.
I feel like because this country was based on immigration and everybody from different places coming over here, why should he have the right to take that away from other people, you know?
Sure. No, it's really, look, one of the arguments that was made was not this very fancy constitutional argument, but simply an argument that under federal immigration laws, he did not have the authority to do what he was trying to do. So there's that kind of argument, as well as the kind of more, whatever you want to call it, more kind of high-profile constitutional argument.
Right, right.
Yeah.
How do you feel about DACA? They're trying to take away DACA for like good.
Yeah. No, look.
Do you think it's gonna happen?
That's, you know, it's a political question now. What the president did was he punted the issue to Congress, and he did so though, and then he turned around and said, "Well, here's my price tag for reinstituting DACA. My price tag is a whole lot more funding for border security, a border wall." And limitations on the number of legal immigrants that can come into the country. And my understanding is that, at least with regard to the border wall, that is a price that Democrats in Congress are not willing to pay in order to get DACA reinstituted. So this is going to be a very interesting political issue because a lot of Republicans are also not so crazy about the border wall. And so they may actually pass, with Republican support, a reinstitution of DACA without border wall funding. And it'll be interesting to see whether the president signs that.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of changes they're going to make as far as DACA goes.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's just change gears and talk about how he's been violating the Constitution.
Sure.
You know, because actually you have it, Terry. I believe.
I do.
Yeah, because it's like he's done a lot. Where there was a point where he violated the emoluments clauses with his business entanglements, because D.C. District Attorney General Carl Racine had mentioned that, and the only thing is, I was in greatness that someone has said it, but the only question is that could there be enough Washington woes? Do you think there could be enough Washington woes that could lead to his impeachment? And plus, what would you say if a president is violating from the Constitution, such as the emoluments clauses?
So yeah, look, it is a good question. This president has been teaching us a lot about our Constitution, largely by getting very, very close to the line of violating, if not stepping over the line.
Right.
He's like doing it incorrectly, or like the opposite, negatively.
Absolutely. One of the examples is the emoluments clause. No one had heard of the emoluments clause before President Trump took office, and you know, this is a obscure provision of the Constitution that reflects a very basic idea, which is that a president of the United States or other high federal officials should not be accepting gifts or things of value from foreign powers. You can unreasonably understand that. You don't want the King of France or the King of England, you know, bribing the President of the United States or the U.S. Attorney General. The issue becomes more difficult in the modern era when, for example, presidents own stock and have other investments that might involve foreign sovereigns or foreign nations. It gets even more difficult than that with regard to President Trump, because his real estate empire, his branding operations are so deeply involved with foreign countries that there's a really difficult time figuring out where the government ends and where Trump Enterprises begins.
Right.
And that's a really problematic thing in terms of the emoluments clause. Now,
and even the First Amendment, when he talks about how the fake media it's just fake, you know.
Absolutely. Well, look, he tweeted out a few days ago, that you know, he doesn't like the way NBC is covering him. He's accusing them of fake news. And then he suggested that maybe NBC's broadcast license ought to be revoked. Now, he made a basic mistake, which of course he often does, which is that the network itself does not have a license from the Federal Communications Commission. The local affiliates do. So WNBC in New York or KNBC in Los Angeles, they're the entities that have the broadcast licenses, not the NBC television network. But even on its own terms, the idea that the president would suggest that because of what the broadcaster is saying, it should have its license taken away, as you indicated, that is such a bald-faced violation of the First Amendment that it's kind of difficult to put it into words.
I feel like he's doing a lot of. I feel like he's trying to change a lot of things. Like, as far as us and us having. I feel like as Americans, we're pretty modernized in almost everything we do. Yeah. Whether it's religion, people's sexuality or just people's lifestyle, period. I feel like he's trying to take a lot of that away from just a normal life having in America.
Yes.
And you can see why well, not nobody, a lot of people disagree with him.
Yes.
So,
yes.
what do you guys think about the transgender? Is it transgender?
Yeah, the transgender military ban.
Right.
I was just about to discussing that because he made the tweet July 26th announcing the ban, stating after consultation with his generals and military experts, please be advised that the U.S. government will not allow or accept transgender individuals to serve in any capacity of the U.S. military. Now, I'm like, and when I heard that, I'm like, really?
Yes.
Now, can we just like make that clear? Like, is it just only transgenders, or do gays and lesbians also abide by that? Like,
Well, yes, great question. So, around 2010 or 2011,
Yes.
Congress passed a law that got rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell,
Right.
which had been the previous ban on open gays and lesbians serving in the military.
During the Obama administration.
That's right.
Right.
So President Trump cannot overturn that because Congress, by statute, has said that openly gay and lesbian service members can continue to serve.
Right.
So we're really talking about transgendered
Okay.
soldiers. And what's kind of extraordinary about that tweet that David quoted a minute ago is that he actually didn't consult. It seems like he did not consult the Pentagon on this. The Secretary of Defense, I believe, was not even in town when he tweeted this out. And there was very, very last-minute emergency consultations with the higher-ups in the Pentagon before the president tweeted this out. This was not a carefully vetted decision. So procedurally, it was really problematic. And substantively, it's problematic because there have been studies done that have indicated that the presence of transgender soldiers in the military does not affect readiness, does not affect morale, and doesn't impose any large amount of costs on the military. The president's already been sued by transgender rights advocates over this. And when they come out, when they show the court these studies, that indicate there's no damage done to the military, no large costs imposed on the military by allowing transgender people to serve. There's a real good question about whether the court will allow that tweet to stand.
Yeah, and another thing is like, when you look at the guy in the White House who's running our country, he's trying to do everything to undo what Obama did while he was in office.
Yes.
It's like, what is your view about that, in terms of law perspective? Why he wants to like undo everything that he's done?
Sure. It's not unusual when a president of one party succeeds a president of the other party that the new president tries to undo some of the things that the former president did. That's not uncommon at all. It's kind of, in some way, the rules of the game. President Trump has taken this to the nth degree. And he seems, without psychoanalyzing him, he seems obsessed with undoing President Obama's legacy.
Yeah.
Don't forget, he tweeted out a series of photos of his picture gradually over the course of several tweets superseding President Obama's picture.
Yes.
That kind of indicates that this is more than just plain old, we disagree with the former president's policy.
Taking it to a personal level
this
now.
Is personal, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that indicates that there's something deeply personal and problematic about
even
this.
when he tweeted out about him wiretapping his phones, which apparently is a lie. Speaking of his lies, because the New York Times posted a whole bunch of lies about this guy that's running our country, and it's like there's so many of them. And it's like, what do you have to say about it? Because it's like when you hear his lies, it's like he's not really just telling the truth, because he's gonna be facing a lot of issues in terms of law perspectives or whatever the case is. But what do you have to say about his lies?
Every president, every politician stretches the truth. That is simply part of what politics is. Just like changing a former president's policies, stretching the truth is kind of the rules of the game. Once again, President Trump has taken this to the nth degree.
Yes.
He has a very flexible relationship with the truth.
Yeah.
You might even say, you know, he has an open relationship with the truth.
Right.
You know, he's there when it suits him, and when it doesn't suit him, he walks away from it. You know, this is why the press is so important. This is why programs like this are so important.
Yes.
This is why it's so important for citizens to be engaged and informed and involved. Because without calling the president on these lies, he gets away with them. He just told one, as you may remember, about whether former presidents, including President Obama, called families of service members who died in action. And he said, oh, you know, I don't think former presidents did this. And thank goodness there was a reporter who had been there during previous administrations, including the Obama administration, and she raised her hand and said, Mr. President, I was actually I covered the Obama administration, and I saw him make these calls.
I think you're talking about the journalist April Ryan.
Yes, absolutely. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so good for her for being there, for calling him out on the lie, and for that lie getting a lot of publicity, which in fact it has.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's the way the press is supposed to operate. And it's more important than ever, given this president's very flexible relationship with the truth.
Right. So, you know, and the thing is, we have to wrap this up, but I want to know is, like, in a few years from now, as we get closer to 2018 and 2020, do you think he may be able to violate any more laws or regulations, or where do we go from here as time goes on, as even as us youths speaking, and for the people that are watching the show?
Sure. Look, I think the future course of this presidency will be determined by things that happen over the course of the next 6 months to a year. If he is not able to pass tax reform, then that will make him 0 for 2 on his major domestic agenda items, right? Healthcare and tax reform.
Right.
If he doesn't build the wall either, then he will have gone 0 for 3. And if he goes 0 for 2 or 0 for 3 in the first year, then you can expect Republicans to have a very difficult time in the 2018 congressional elections, which in turn will cripple his agenda from 2018 into 2020. Now, of course, this all assumes that the special prosecutor doesn't drop a bomb on Washington. This assumes that that Congress itself doesn't uncover something really problematic. And if that does, then of course all bets are off for the continuation of this presidency.
Yes. Bill, this was a great conversation.
Absolutely.
And you're more than welcome to come back, because this shall to be continued here.
Happy to do it. Absolutely.
Yes. We want to give our special thanks to our Brooklyn Law School professor, Bill Araiza, for breaking down some of the new guy's assets and his agenda, clear explaining the laws, the constitutions for his agenda. Just tell us where we can find you.
Sure. So you can find me at the Brooklyn Law website. That's brooklaw.edu, BROOKLAW.edu. Look under the faculty tab. Look through the rest of the website. There's a whole wealth of stuff that Brooklyn faculty are doing about the Trump administration, commentary, scholarship, etc.
There you have it here. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.